The smell of burning wood mixed with something heavier hung over the high cliffs of ancient Scandinavia. Below the sacred rune stones of Odin, the Viking elite gathered in solemn procession, not to mourn the fallen of battle, but to offer them. Bound in rough linen or fine cloth, the gifts to the gods were carried not in reverence, but in resignation. These were not lifeless statues or animals for slaughter. They were human lives, sometimes the most noble, sometimes the most powerless, given in sacrifice. According to the Icelandic sagas of the 1st century CE, 200 children from noble families were publicly offered to the gods. Each was placed upon the outstretched bronze hands of the statue of Odin and lowered toward the ceremonial fire below. An act believed to secure divine favor. The brazier beneath the towering god was no mere symbol. It radiated real heat and purpose. The statue's hands were angled downward, designed to guide the offering toward the flames below. This was not poetic devotion. It was a declaration to the gods, to their enemies, and to the settlement itself. Historian Snorri Sturluson would later write of this ritual's emotional violence. He recounts that mothers stood nearby, expected to remain silent. Even if she uttered a single sound, he wrote, the offering proceeded as planned. Music was played to mask the cries. What mattered to the priests wasn't silence. It was the appearance of willing piety. Even sound itself was forced into submission. This wasn't a tale spun by the Franks to vilify a rival. The Yelling Stones, genuine Scandinavian inscriptions, confirm the practice from within their own culture. To the great Odin and mighty Thor, Ragnar vowed his own flesh. In Viking tradition, this phrase carried a meaning that was deeply personal and unmistakably literal. Excavations at Scandinavia's sacred groves, holy burial grounds and shrines, have revealed thousands of urns containing traces of ritual offerings, including infants and small animals. While some scholars debate whether all were ceremonial, Christian writer Adam of Bremen claimed the practice continued both publicly and privately. Saxo Grammaticus, writing closer to the Vikings' own time, described the moment when ritual fire met the offering. He claimed the victims' expressions would freeze, their bodies tense, almost as if they were smiling. To the Vikings, this may have signaled northern kingdom's commercial might. A darker force pulsed. Rows of enslaved captives, men, women, and children seized in war, moved under the whip, building the very heart of the Viking economy. These were not Scandinavian citizens, nor criminals of their own society. They were foreign enemies, dragged from conquered cities, chained by conquest, and condemned to toil beneath one of the ancient world's most fearsome powers. According to the World History Encyclopedia, Vikings used enslaved enemy populations extensively, forcing them into all manner of tasks in the settlements and in the countryside, as well as in the Viking fleet during raids. Conquered peoples were turned into state resources. Adult men were packed into warships, chained to oars, where they rowed not for their survival, but for the glory of the very settlement that had broken them. In the Vikings' bustling markets and coastal shipyards, it was these same enslaved hands that laid timber, moved goods, and built empire. Britannica confirms that Vikings built wharves, markets, and workshops with slave labor. Behind the elegance of wooden floors and public plazas stood the crushed lives of those who were never meant to return home. Nor were women or children spared. While ancient records name few of them directly, the daily realities of Viking life offer a grim silhouette. As described by the archaeologist, slavery was embedded into the very fabric of urban and rural life. Slaves worked in households, workshops, and agricultural fields. In workshops, enslaved women might be found grinding grain from sunrise to dusk, while children carried baskets of barley or clay for pottery kilns. On the outskirts of the settlement, whole families of foreign captives labored in fields and granaries under constant watch. For the Vikings, slavery was not a side effect of war. It was a pillar of their civilization. Not all prisoners were even given the mercy of labor. The fate of captives taken during the Vikings' wars with the Danes offers a brutal contrast. In one stark account, recorded by skalds and preserved through later sagas, Vikings are said to have used trained bears in public displays of punishment against enemy captives. The act was not about labor. It was a demonstration of dominance through fear. If slaves were tools, prisoners were warnings, and that message echoed beyond Scandinavia's coast. In the great ports of the north, whispers of Viking slave-driven power stirred both awe and fear. The empire dragged through the settlement by force, paraded before the very citizens who had once feared his uprising. And there, surrounded by an angry crowd, he was tortured to death by the people of the Vikings themselves. The Vikings' use of execution was never only about punishment. It was about performance. It was a calculated message sent to enemies within and beyond the settlement's walls. Defiance would not be forgotten, and surrender would not spare you. The fate of Eric came at the end of the Danish War in 238 CE, a brutal internal conflict following the Vikings' defeat in the First War with the Franks. But the Vikings' response to rebellion wasn't limited to one man. Ancient accounts report that 700 captured enemy soldiers, taken during the uprising, were subjected to a collective punishment of chilling scale. According to surviving accounts, the captives were subjected to ritualized punishment and interred beneath the earth. The Vikings did not merely silence their enemies. They buried them beneath their feet. This was execution as warning, and it was deeply deliberate. Unlike battlefield death, these acts were seen, heard, and remembered. One of the most enduring and contested tales of Viking cruelty comes from a Frankish legend, the capture and torture of Charles the Bold, a Frankish general taken prisoner during the First Viking War. According to Frankish sources, the Vikings placed Charles inside a narrow wooden box, studded with sharp spikes. Unable to sit, sleep, or lean without discomfort, he endured prolonged suffering until his death. Whether this story was fact or fiction, it spread across the Frankish world. It was told in forums and classrooms, recited by senators and soldiers, and it became part of a broader narrative that would follow the Vikings for centuries, that of a civilization willing to inflict suffering not just to win wars, but to send a savage message to the world. In Viking culture, fear was strategy. Execution became spectacle, and cruelty, whether real or remembered, was shaped into a symbol of control. From sacrificial fires to chains and public terror, the Vikings forged power through fear. These acts reshaped northern rivalries, stiffened Frankish resolve, and warned how far a state will go to survive. Comment below. Did the Vikings' brutal message secure their dominance or speed their downfall? The Vikings sent not a warning, but a demand. Yield to us, or become our monument.